Teysa Karlov versus Yidris, Maelstrom Weilder. I think we can keep that fairly safely. We're on the draw. And we can get a hangerback walker down on turn 2 and start plussing that up. Ready for Teysa to come down and throw out some Thopters for us. As for turn 1, we'll hold up Swords to Plowshares, but I don't think we're going to be using it. Probably just go for a tapped Godless Shrine. And yeah, our opponent just gets down a tap land. There's Sultai tap land. So we will grab ourselves Godless Shrine. And there we go, we get into a swamp. I don't want to play Urborg anytime soon because we might help our opponent with that. They're not doing as well as they might on their coloured sources currently. Hangerback Walker for 2 mana. Hangerback Walker is one of the creatures that has a dying trigger. When it dies, we get Thopters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on Hangerback Walker. Azusa coming out, just hoping our opponent doesn't have lots of extra lands. Okay, a Lair card is coming out. Just getting the mana fixing currently, and then Amulet of Vigour. Perhaps could have got that out beforehand. And then getting down a tap land that effectively becomes untapped. Now I wonder, I think we want to hold the Swords to Plowshares for Yidris. It is a 5/4 with trample in every colour except white. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, spells you cast from your hand this turn gain Cascade. We pretty much want to do everything we can to keep Yidris out of play. This taps for black, doesn't it? Yeah, that's a Jund land. Yeah, I think I still want to hold off on the Urborg. On the Urborg, Yawgmoth. That's not Urborg. We'll go for the Reliquary Tower. And I think we can just Viscera Seer. We'll hold up a mana for tapping down Hangerback Walker, and we'll also hold up Swords to Plowshares. Teysa Karlov is a Necromonicon commander, 4 mana in Orzhov for a 2/4. Creature tokens we control get Vigilance and Lifelink. And whenever a creature dying causes a death trigger, it triggers twice. Only 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. They get down a Thespian Stage, so I wonder if that's just some kind of mana fixing. That's what they're using it for. It doesn't seem as though they're too worried about getting any kind of combo down. And then in comes Azusa. Why don't we block with the Hangerback Walker? Our opponent might have some kind of trick up their sleeve here, but we'll get it out of their hand if they do. No, we just managed to get rid of their Azusa. Maybe they forgot that Hangerback Walker could put a +1/+1 counter on itself. And I think they have sufficient black mana now, and it's the only land drop we can make, so we'll go for Urborg. And then what's the likelihood of Yidris getting haste? I think we're okay to go for our commander here. And then at least if the Hangerback Walker... Okay, going for Elixir of Immortality. That's gain 5 life and shuffle the graveyard back into the library. Yeah, so if our opponent does do something like a board wipe, we can get a lot of scry effects going with Viscera Seer at the very least. Out comes the Elixir of Immortality again. You shuffle Elixir of Immortality into your graveyard. Wow, did they just draw? They must have drawn the Elixir of Immortality then. Unless there's something I'm missing. Alright, out comes Yidris, Maelstrom Weilder. Now the question is, do we want to wait for our opponent to attempt enchanting Yidris or giving it unblockable or something like that, get a card out of our opponent's hand? Problem is they're in white, so not white, they're in everything but white. They're in blue, so They might be able to counter something that we do. We'll definitely get a plains down. Then why don't we go for Athreos? And then if we decide to sack our Hangerback Walker, not only will it trigger twice, but our opponent will need to, they'll need to pay 3 life twice to keep us off that as well. I'm going to risk handing it back over to our opponent. They've got 2 cards in hand, and I don't know how many counter spells they play in Yidris, but I'd like to attempt to get an unblockable effect of some kind out of our opponent's hand, although would they even use it? No, we'll just pass the turn over. If they've got a counter spell, then they'll use it on a card later down the line anyway, perhaps even on the Skull Clamp. Incubation Druid is a new card. Tap, add a mana of any type that a land you control could produce. And if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, you produce 3 mana of that type instead. That is a very good card. And I think that one has slipped me by. Yeah, that's a very good card. Alright. Now we'll see if our opponent wants to attempt to swing in with Yidris. They do. We will attempt to Swords to Plowshares first. And this way as well, they have to wait until... That's good, so they have to wait until next turn to get Yidris down, because they got the Incubation Druid out first. We will put another +1/+1 counter on the Hangerback Walker. I think we're okay to get down Falconwrath Noble here. Just kind of slow rolling things out. But we can swing in at our opponent with Teysa Karlov. I think that is fairly safe. Get a little bit of damage onto them. Yeah, we're just in a setup period here. But that Skull Clamp is really going to allow us to refresh our hand. Our opponent has missed a land drop, so it doesn't look like they're getting Yidris back out. Oh, no, they do have the Incubation Druid, don't they? So, add 1 mana of any... Yeah, so they can add mana without a +1/+1 counter. Out comes another commander from 2018. That is Thantis the Wereweaver, or Warweaver. It's not a werewolf, so I don't know why I called it a wereweaver. Jund, and it is, 3 and Jund, 6 mana, 5/5, Vigilance and Reach. All creatures attack each turn if able. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, put a +1/+1 counter on Thantis. Oh, definitely going to have to play around it. We'll put a +1/+1 counter on the Hangerback Walker. Felwar Stone. I think we're going to need to replace our sack outlet if our opponent blocks with Viscera Seer. Yeah, this is tricky. I think we'll get down the Skull Clamp now. And we'll attempt to have our opponent... I think they're going to block the Falconwrath Noble. So let's go for that. If they block Hangerback Walker, that's fine with us. And then we'll leave it at that. We'll swing in. We have to attack with everything thanks to Thantis. Yep, it's already done it for us, so let's go for that. Multiple +1/+1 counters I'll put onto Thantis. And it has Vigilance, so it can attack in next turn. Alright, they decide to go after Teysa. So in that case, why don't we sacrifice Hangerback Walker. That is 2 Falconwrath Noble triggers, draining our opponent for 2. 2 Athreos God of Passage triggers. Our opponent's going to have to pay a total of 6 if they want to keep Hangerback Walker in the graveyard. And then Hangerback Walker, I think it had 4 counters on it. which means we'll get 8 Thopters. And then we'll save the target so we don't have another opponent to target with Athreos. See if they pay the 6 life here. No, they decide to give us back the Hangerback Walker. Now we can deal 16 damage to our opponent, can't we? Because these Thopters get doubled up. I think I'd actually rather skull clamp a couple of them just to refill our hand. So let's say OK to the Scry. Lightning Greaves, don't really care about Lightning Greaves, I don't think. Might come in handy with Grave Titan though. But if we decide to play Grave Titan next turn, yeah, I don't think that's going to be quick enough for us. And then we will go for a Skull Clamp on a Thopter. And we'll only get one trigger on each of these death triggers because Teysa has been dealt with. But we will draw a couple of cards with Skull Clamp. Henny comes down. I can't remember if I've made a land drop this turn. I have not. So Phyrexian Tower can come down there. And we'll also get down the Felwar Stone. And then we'll clamp Falconwrath Noble as well. Alright, pass the turn like that. We will definitely get down Teysa next turn, I think. And we might be able to... Yeah, that coupled up with Grave Titan, we might... In fact, maybe we want to get Grave Titan down because that is not only tokens, but it's a Death Toucher. And although Thantis can be chump blocked quite successfully, can't it? Down comes a Primeval Titan from our opponent. That does have Trample, which might be relevant. We'll see if they have any of the oppressive combos with Thespian Stage. Okay, they go for Gaia's Cradle and Diamond Valley. And thanks to Amulet of Vigour, they do get to untap those lands as soon as they come in. Gaia's Cradle is currently tapping for 3 mana. And we'll just block here. And then we might as well sacrifice the Thopter in response to blocks in order to get a free Scry. Isolated Chapel, I don't mind getting a land drop next turn, so that's fine. We don't lose any life there. We draw into the Isolated Chapel, which we already knew about. We'll go for Teysa right now. Holding up Phyrexian Tower just in case we need a sack outlet. Our opponent might deal with Viscera Seer somehow. And we're still at the point where we have to attack each turn, aren't we? We'll send everything in at our opponent, see what they want to block this time. Getting a bunch of counters on Thantis, hoping that our opponent doesn't gain trample on that thing. Alright, yeah, definitely going for the Falconwrath Noble now. We can get 6 damage on our opponent with the Thopters. We can get a sack outlet down this turn with Henny. We're going to draw some cards. They'll have to pay 6 life to keep both these cards out of our hand. I think we just let this happen. We'll draw 4 cards with Falconwrath Noble dying. And all these death triggers getting doubled up thanks to our commander. This is exactly what Teysa Karlov wants to do. We draw into Teferi's Protection, which is actually pretty good. I was going to get down Henny Undying Partisan as a sack outlet, but I think holding up Teferi's Protection is good. And they decide to pay the life on Viscera Seer and Falconwrath Noble staying out of the graveyard, or staying in the graveyard out of our hand. So what we can do next turn, yeah, I think we just hold up Teferi's Protection. Worst case scenario, we can Damnation and then drop a Grave Titan and start going wide on our opponent. And then they've got Elixir of Immortality to gain some life again. And they're up to 10, so we can't kill them next turn. We're going to have to discard a card here as well. Now that's quite... I think Hangerback Walker has to be the thing that we discard here. Oh no, I forgot all about the Reliquary Tower. We've got an unlimited hand size, so we don't need to worry about that. Demonic Tutor for an aristocrat, blood artist would actually work for us, wouldn't it? Yeah, that could be exactly what we go for next turn, actually. If we sacrifice a Thopter to Phyrexian Tower... Okay, Nesting Dragon I don't think I'm worried about. Yeah, if we sacrifice a Thopter to the Phyrexian Tower to get Teferi's Protection down, then we'll have 5 Thopters left. Then we go Demonic Tutor for 2, Blood Artist for 2, and Spawning Pit for 2. We'll have 2 mana left up, and we can... Yeah, we can Aristocrat a win out of our opponent. So that is the plan. And we can also Wasteland our opponent's Gaia's Cradle for good measure. They will get some free lands here that will come in untapped, so I think in response to this, I imagine our opponent's not going to pay 6 life to keep the token out of our hand, because we obviously wouldn't get the token anyway. We'll go to Teferi's Protection, just in case our opponent goes for a land that wants to untap and does something that isn't very nice to us. Going for an Izzet Boilerworks, a bounce land, and Deserted Temple, which is 1 untap to untap a target land. I dare say that is going to go with Gaia's Cradle to start producing a lot of mana. Still only 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. And then if they haven't made a land drop this turn, they could bounce Gaia's Cradle with Izzet Boilerworks and generate even more mana. And we don't have to worry about blocks because we're not currently part of the game. We have phased out thanks to Teferi's Protection. Now then, I will get going with the Demonic Tutor. We'll grab ourselves a Blood Artist. Then we can go 1 and 2 for Spawning Pit, and 1 and 2 for Blood Artist. We'll get down Wasteland, and then it is just a case of sacrificing the Thopter. We can do this at instant speed now, so I don't think there's anything our opponent can do about any of this. We drain our opponent twice per Thopter that's sacrificed. And every time we sacrifice a creature, we get a charge counter on the Spawning Pit, so that could actually generate us another creature to sacrifice if we wanted to. Spawning Pit, a very underrated card. A great sack outlet that can go in any deck. They're gaining life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. So they're going to gain 2 life. I don't think that matters because we can... Does Blood Artist trigger on itself? It certainly does. And we can kill Teysa anyway. Let's kill that thing. Didn't actually account for that, so that might keep us off a win this turn because they can untap it with the Deserted Temple. Alright, I think we can just because we can do this at instant speed for no mana, I don't think we really need to play around any of this. Yeah, that's right. We just sack a couple of Thopters. It's good that we forced our opponent to do it, to get it on the stack earlier rather than later, because now they don't get the chance to resolve that. And we just do it again to our opponent and drain them for 2. Yeah, what they were looking to do there was untap the Diamond Valley with the Deserted Temple, and they wanted to untap Diamond Valley so that they could sacrifice a creature. They were probably going to sacrifice Thantis and gain themselves lots of life. So there we are, that was a good game to our opponent. We saw Thantis become a big threat in no time flat, and we also got to see some Death Trigger shenanigans with Teysa Karlov. I've had a few games recently where it's just kind of turned into token overrun type theme, going wide on our opponent, so glad that we got to see some Death Trigger shenanigans going on with Teysa Karlov. That is of course what the deck is built around and what the deck really likes to do. So hope you all enjoyed that. That was Teysa Karlov versus Yidris, Maelstrom Weilder. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.